Welcome to the Scale Builders Guild. Thanks again for watching. Right on the nose, it's 8:30. Please let me know if you can hear me fine, you can see me, everything's working. Otherwise, I gotta restart everything again. So let me know if you can hear things, please. I'll wait. There you are, I can hear you. All right, excellent. Perfect, great. I'm not in any mood to restart things tonight anyway. Because I'm tired. I just did a 30-minute spin class. For those of you who were wondering if it was going to be a button-down shirt or a t-shirt today, it's a Protoform t-shirt. I quite like this shirt a lot, actually. It's one of these, like smooth, like poly blend t-shirts. So great. They hold the stink though. All right, tonight we are playing around with the Ampro Engineering Sand Scorcher scale build. There it is. Wow. In memory of not my brother, but in memory of the builder's brother, Shippy. Miss you, fucker. So the car itself is built, has a steering servo in there now, which you can hear. All the little detail bits are on, windshield wipers, mirrors, headlights, marker lights. That license plate was just for placement, just to make sure that these RC Plate Shop metal plates were going to fit, and they do. I've got some of the actual plates from the reference, and that's something that I should mention here, is that I built this off of a reference car that existed in real life at one point. I found this on like parkedcars.com or something, and I've had these pictures for about 5 or 6 years, always with the intention of building exactly this car, and I think it's pretty close. I think some things about it aren't quite right. Obviously, the marker lights are up on the fenders on this one, and they're down here, and I probably should have done that, but I forgot. Yeah, I just, I wanted to do something kind of special with this Ampro kit, because if you haven't seen any of the previous episodes, this is a completely different chassis. You can see here that sort of FRP plate that they use in the original Sand Scorcher is gone. This is a 3D printed rear or bottom chassis brace that replaces all of that. So you're really only using the transmission skid assembly and the front steering assembly, and that's it. Here's where your battery goes, under here, and your electronics and wiring gets routed through there, so it's nice and clean. It allows for a full interior, which is pretty amazing on a Sand Scorcher, if I'm honest. Seats, seat belts, dashboard, all of that lights up. Yeah, 5-point harnesses, steering wheel, the whole kit and caboodle, if you will. Oh yeah, and inner door panels as well. So you get some nice little extra bits there to kind of complete the whole look. This old school Futaba controller, remote control, becomes the on-off switch for the whole car, which I think is pretty neat. This engine, sort of faux engine cover here, that's from Knight Customs, and it's available on his Shapeways store. It's also available on his My Mini Factory, so you can get that if you're looking to really amp up the whole look of this Ampro Engineering. Oh, you see what I did there? If you want to amp up this whole Ampro Engineering build. So that's the build. We're going to do some weathering tonight, and weathering in real time is going to be as exciting as you can imagine it would be. We're not going too crazy because the original car isn't all that cruddy. There's a bit of rust along the rocker panels down here. You can sort of see that in this photo. And it's got kind of a dusty look, but it's not super dusty or cruddy. It's actually in pretty decent shape, if I'm honest. So we're going to do a tiny bit of stuff. Just a few things to sort of help, you know, take this extra super shiny body and make it kind of fit a little bit better with the look. And you can see actually in this photo, there's a, you know, don't pay attention to my airbrushing techniques or starting of practice. There are a few little bits and pieces here where you can actually see a little bit more rust coming off of some of these elements. And we're going to try to make that kind of feel a little bit more real. There's also, like you can see right here, some rain splashes, or like, you know, over time, water just runs in the same place, so dirt kind of collects there. So we're going to try to, you know, do something with that as well. Yeah, so there you go. Let me just check the chat here, and then I'll kind of go through some of my... I always kind of keep the reference photos close by, so I always know what I'm kind of doing and if I'm doing it properly. And then I'll get through some of the materials and stuff I'm using too. You do not need to have an airbrush. I have an airbrush, and I'll probably be using it at some point tonight. But a lot of these techniques you can apply with a toothbrush instead, which I will go through. You can also do like a light dusting of like a TS tan. And if you hold the can far enough away from the actual subject, and we're talking about like, you know, if the car's here, say like, I don't know, what is this, 20 squares? 20 squares away or so, just give it a tss from the front, tss, and you'll get a nice dusting all over the front of the car. There goes the airbrush. I did kind of pump it up beforehand, but that'll go off every once in a while. You're just going to have to deal with that. Okay, so what am I going to use tonight? I'm going to use this Vallejo Environment, which is an acrylic, and it's rust texture. And this actually works really, really well for making rust, but I like to combine it with a little bit of Vallejo Model Wash, also rust. And we're going to give these a nice shaky to make sure they're all ready to go. Oh yeah, the chat, that's what I was going to do. Let me go back here and make sure that I haven't missed any important questions. Hey Ryan, loved the LS Post video. Gonna watch it again after the stream is over. Right on. I really enjoyed making that video. That truck turned out amazing. SBG Live always comes at the right time for me to ignore everything that's going on and just have some RC medicine. Right on. Thanks, JT Motens. Sawyer, does anyone know if you can put an RC four-wheel drive body on a Red Cat? Provided they're the same wheelbase, or you can always change the rear links to make it the right wheelbase. You won't probably be able to use the inner fender structure on the Red Cat because they're pretty wide and they won't fit any of the RC four-wheel drive bodies. One serious question, where will we get the running video of Skippy? It's Shippy. Shippy, I don't know. Soon, probably. I mean, I'm going to probably wrap up most of the weathering tonight, and then it'll be ready to go. I've got some work that I've got to do this week and possibly weekend, so doubtful that I'll be able to get to it this weekend, but I will get to it soon. Builds are always better when they're based around a real example. Yes, 100%. It's just so much easier to do some of these things when you've got a real-world reference to reference. Still drooling over the TRX giveaway truck. Right on. I like how Matt says Futaba. I guess you could also say Futaba. That just sounds like Futaba sounds right. Javier, question, Matt. Not sure how YouTube analytics works, but if I watch one of your videos multiple times, does that count as multiple views? No, I don't think it does. I think if you're from the same IP, it counts them all as one. Doesn't really matter, though. Watch them as many times as you want. How did you do the wet look on the engine? Great question. I will tell you. Where is it? Vallejo Environment Wet Effects. It actually makes things look a little tiny bit glossy. It's got some color in it, and it's sort of like a greeny kind of, I don't know, smush, we'll call it. But this stuff works really, really well for keeping things looking a little tiny bit moist. So Vallejo Environment Acrylic Wet Effects. Great product. We'll be definitely using that a bit tonight. Pretty sure I've watched enough of SBG videos to pay for a VS410. That's quite possible. Dana, hello. Travis, hello. My mod squad. Thanks for checking in, guys. I feel like I've missed a bunch. Mounting a 2010 Sand Scorcher body set on a Cross RC Emo AT4. Sounds like an interesting, cool project. Definitely. It looks real. Parts of it does. Yes. Smash the like button, please. Thank you. All right. You have 800 likes on Ellis Post. Is you doing videos worth it? Josh says no. You're gonna need to clear up something there. I don't know what you mean there, Craig. Sorry. Skippy is the other YouTube guys. I'm calling his Lippy because he likes to chirp a little bit. All right. Matt, did my Scorcher body come with the rear window? No, none of them do. Because, why is that? On the real one, I don't think it, because you need to be able to get the body off. That's how you do it. You clip it on in the back here on the roll cage with that clip. The only way to do that is through the rear window, so they didn't include the rear window. Moister than an oyster. That sounds horrible. It's a VW engine, so it'll always be moist. Jay Burris, I actually reached out. I tried to connect to his Instagram, and he hasn't approved me as a guy yet, so I don't know. All right, so because we're using acrylics, we don't need any sort of fancy lacquer thinners or anything today. We can just use regular, everyday, good old-fashioned water. I've got this little palette that I've been using for a number of years, and what I do is I just apply a few drops of water into one of the palettes, so I always have some water on hand. That's pretty much a no-brainer. Some people like to do a flat coat over the whole body before they start doing this, and in some cases it's quite helpful. I'm going to do a tiny bit of matte varnish just in some of the places where I know it's not going to be shiny. Acrylic can be diluted to make a wash. Yes, absolutely, 100%. The airbrush I'll be using tonight is my Pache. Some people say Pache, some people say Pash. Talon. And this is a dual action brush. Has a nice big fill on the top there. And looks like it's probably not in the best performing state right now. Put away wet. Yeah, that's feeling a little cruddy. So I'm just going to quickly clean up that needle. And that I will use airbrush cleaner on a paper towel just to get it nice and clean. Always have paper towel handy when doing any sort of painting or weathering. This will be over in no time, provided I don't stab myself. Mr. Catter, yeah, Josh's should be drippy. Travis, you did not miss the sticker sheets. They are not yet available. I'm still waiting on them to be shipped to me, but it shouldn't be too long now. Just give that a few seconds to dry. Airbrush cleaner is pretty heavy duty. I pre-oiled the chair, so hopefully that won't be a problem tonight. Mr. Cataract, would it be possible to make the gatekeeper cage to look rusty? I mean, there's probably nothing preventing you from doing that. You could probably, you know, what would I suggest for that? It's tough, because plastic, like the plastic in a cage, doesn't generally hold paint very well. So my suggestion on that would be to hit it with some flat clear and then try to apply some rusting paint or whatever. Yeah, you could give that a shot. All right, so I've just barely got a tiny little bit of matte in the airbrush, and I'm just going to spray down some of the edges here. You won't even be able to see anything happening, but I'm just doing this to sort of prepare for a little more weathering action. A lot of gloss here, so just knocking it back just a slight, tiny little bit. So it can stick. Yes, exactly. You're still gonna be challenged with that, because as soon as you roll it, it's all gonna flake right off, unless you use some sort of fancy, specifically for plastic. You know what? I wouldn't recommend it. You probably will be disappointed. All right. Almost there on the spots that I want. A little bit of flat. The whole thing will probably get a coat of flat at the end just to seal in a lot of these effects. I'm using a really low PSI too, like super low. This will just give something for the rust effect paint and stuff to kind of grip to. Could even do a little bit along the edges of the bottoms of the windows. If you do not have an airbrush, and most people don't, and that's totally fine, this was definitely something that made things a lot easier for me. If you don't have an airbrush, I highly recommend something as simple as a toothbrush for kind of flicking the paint onto a thing. You can even use just a regular everyday kind of thicker brush. I don't have any handy, but if you had like a big flat kind of brush, you just load it up with some paint. Just do that. That's going to give you a nice splatter effect. So definitely something to consider. All right. Bulldog plastic primer from Westmade there in the suggestions. That's probably going to be something that will work pretty well for sealing that stuff in. Adam, no, I was not a big static model guy, but I use a lot of static model techniques because they are, very much one and the same. You can do an awful lot with the same effects, just scale it up a little bit. All right, so now we're going to do some rusting because I want to get these rocker panels all along here kind of matching our photos. And I mean, the actual car, everything tapers in and there isn't this sort of flat panel here, but we're going to kind of make it work anyway. So I've got some of my rust texture from Vallejo here. I shouldn't have any trouble seeing that. Josh's chip brushes for Pringles. So this paint actually has a lot of like goop in it, and it is quite textured. You can actually see in the thing here, there's a lot going on in there, and it's pretty thick. So what I like to do is not coat the whole thing, obviously, right away, but give it just a little bit of a, like, just kind of subtle, not everywhere, but just enough to kind of get started. And what I'll do here afterwards, because rust doesn't go everywhere, right? It's a randomizing sort of pattern and structure. So what I like to use is this kind of cruddy, older Citadel brush that I've got here. And it's seen better days. Obviously, not very smooth, and does a really good job of sort of texturizing almost. I don't know how else to explain it. But it's definitely doing the job I want it to. And then we'll also go in all along this edge as well. But like I said, I'm not covering the whole thing quite yet. I'm just getting some sort of loose patterns kind of built here. And then I'm going to go back in and kind of fill some of it in with another technique. And because there is texture built in, it really does give this a nice finish. You can already see it's sort of doing exactly what I want it to. And there would be points where there would be more, and there would be points where there would be less. So we're going to try to sort of do that as well. Does anyone have a how-to for this on SBG in terms of the forum? There's a few rusting techniques, probably on the forum, yes. I could also recommend, if you can find it still, there is the... okay, we're going to stop there for now, okay? We're not done with this step yet, though. I am going to load up the bottom a little bit more with a little bit more of this texture, because this whole part would basically be filled in. We're going to do that. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. Okay. And now once we've got that sort of done, don't even need to worry about letting that dry. I'm going to use some of the model wash in rust. And I'm just going to pour a few drops of that in. And as a wash, it's actually pretty heavy. I don't know if you can sort of see that there. There's a lot going on in that for a wash. So what I like to do is knock it back with a tiny bit of water. I'll just load up a fresh brush with just plain, everyday, regular tap water. And I pour that into the palette next to it. And load that up, and then just pull some of the wash out, and then add it back into the water. So then you're diluting it further. And then I'll go over all these areas of rust that I've sort of built in. And you can see how it's already starting to look pretty significantly rustier, but that's exactly the look I'm going for. There's going to be levels of it that are more rusty and less rusty, just by the nature of how rust works. And it also is like, oops, oh boy. So now that I've kind of mucked that up, a paper towel will quite easily get in there and wipe away that excess. Like it was never there. Happy little rust. So this is acrylic. Yes, correct, Larry. It's all acrylic. I'm not much of a lacquer guy. And because it's a wash, it's naturally going to fill in some of the gaps. I also will take some of that rust texture and load it back up into the brush as well. Sort of like making mud, basically. And I'm just going to fill that in. You don't have to be too careful with it. Pretty effective, good looking rust technique. I really like using these products. I've been using them for a long time on a lot of my models. And you can kind of move some of that rust texture around still because it's all still quite wet. But it really gives you this nice finish. Even load a little bit more in and just push it into the places where I feel like it needs it. And then I'll go along the underside here and apply the wash to all those other areas where it was missed. And there you go. A pretty convincing, I'll see if I can get a nice shot of it here. Pretty convincing rusty rocker panel. Which I think looks pretty good. Let's see if I can get a little more light on that. Because that is significantly not as bright as it could be. Hang on, let me move my light. Move my light around and down. There, that's better. Maybe we'll even zoom in a touch too. There we go. Now you can see it. Look at that. That's pretty much right in the realm of where I wanted to be. Now, I did notice there is a little tiny bit on the door panel. Not a big deal. I think it's actually not the worst. We can actually kind of go in and add a little bit more in there. And it's just in the places where you want it to feel like it's gotten a bit rustier. But we're not going to go crazy with it because we're trying to keep this pretty realistic. All right. So another place where we saw some rust, and I think we'll just stick to one side for now. I think that's probably the easiest way to do this for the sake of convenience. Is this the same technique you used for trains? I didn't do a lot of weathering on trains. I didn't have like a massive crazy layout when I was a kid. I only had a 4x8. I loved it more than anything in this whole world. But yeah, not something I did a lot of. I've also got this handy dandy little washing jar here. I'm just gonna put this here so I can always wash off my brushes. Because I think, actually, you know what? There is a little place where we need to put a little bit more rust texture in here. So I'm just going to load that up a little bit more. Bigger bitch, sticker sheets should be here in the next couple of days, actually. They shipped out from Cali not too long ago. So should be here soon enough. What scale of trains? I was HO for my childhood. I was into trains, but not as seriously as others. I really enjoyed trains a lot. But yeah, they weren't really something that I did a lot with in my later years. I mean, you know what? If I ever get tired of this, we'll move on and get back into trains. Anyway, there's your rusty rocker panel. I think that looks pretty spot on to where it was with the real car. So that's pretty good. Now, there were a couple rust spots coming off of door hinges. So now I've got a little tiny, what is this, an 040 brush, which is basically not a brush. It's just like 3 hairs. But we're going to load up some of our rust texture. And I'm actually going to just maybe, in fact, use my paper towel to just dab off a little bit of it so it's not so crazy thick. And I'm just going to put it in right under the edge here of where that is. And I mean, this is borderline crazy. Not everybody is going to take this kind of attention on a model at this scale. But you know what? For the sake of realism and getting it right, I want to do it. Okay, so that's basically all I was going to do on that, with that little bit of texture there. But then I'll load up with some of the wash and add that to the top. And this is the diluted wash again. And the same thing here, just to kind of have it spill out into the top there. And then I'm going to add some more water back in. And then I'm just going to paint up. And what I'm doing is I'm creating these little tiny rust lines. And when that dries, that's going to look pretty darn convincing. In fact, I might even go a little bit lower. But as I go lower, I kind of reduce the concentration. So there's even less and less of that wash, and it becomes just basically water. And if you ever make a mistake or there's too much, you can always just wipe your finger over it. It pretty much disappears. But we are going to do another technique to kind of help dull back all this paint, and I'll show you that in another minute or two. That's the oil dot method, and that's a bit more of a thing. But that's a good start. I think that's looking pretty good. You can hear the squeaky doors now. Yeah, that was the intention there. I think that's looking pretty good. I always go back to your reference. And you can see that in his reference, or my reference there, that's what I'm kind of trying to duplicate there. You can see that. Actually, I just painted more on. But you can see that that's what I'm trying to duplicate. And the rocker panel is pretty much spot on. I'm going to add a touch more just to really kind of sell that rustiness. There we go. A little more there. A little more there. These are ridiculously small details, but for me, they're important. All right. So that's looking pretty good. Was there anything on the door handle? No, it was actually chrome, so I think we'll probably have to paint that now that I see it. Probably a good idea to have that chrome. Would you say that you've gotten into steam trains since they're moist? I would say yes, that steam trains are sort of where if I could have a garden train setup, oh my God, I would be in heaven, I think. All right, so steady hand. Required. I don't like doing all this detail stuff live because it's boring to watch. There we go. That's close enough for jazz. I think that'll suffice, actually. OCD kicking in. Need to get right to that edge. There we go. Perfect. Devil is in the details. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. So I'm going to go back to my reference here. And one of the other things that I wanted to do today was some of these rain marks. That's a really easy one to do. In fact, before I get to that, let's get some dust going on in here and sort of build up of grime. You can see that there's a clearly defined panel line there, and I mean these were actually separate panels on the real car, but we can accentuate that with a wash. What wash to use? I feel like dark brown or maybe light gray. Yeah, I think light gray, and maybe I'll mix that with some Nuln oil from Citadel. This stuff here, Citadel Nuln oil, is basically a big black wash, but it works really well. Just cleaning out my tray here to make sure we don't have any contamination. I'm going to keep my two rust things going for now. You can still see there's a little bit of rust texture and rust wash in there for now. Hey, Seafart Fire Truck. How are you, buddy? Okay, so let me shake up this gray wash here while we're looking at the comments. Yeah, I need to hear the story on that name too. TV show Workaholics reference. I don't think I've seen that show. I will check it out. It's not boring. You have me on the edge of my seat. Well, maybe. All right, so gray wash. I do not dilute this one. I keep this one as is. And for these ones, I'm going to load up that 040 tiny little brush again. And I'm just going to go into these panel lines and trying to be as... You know what? I'm going to put the body down. Zoom back out a little bit. And I'm going to go as slow as possible because I don't want to mess this up. But you basically just want to kind of get it in that line where the panels would meet. And it'll naturally flow into that gap. You're not seeing much of it now, but I promise you it'll all be worth it. Add some Nuln oil into there too. This one's going to be a much darker wash. You should see it instantly if my hand isn't in the way. And the idea with washes is that they'll naturally, like all of the pigment will flow into the gaps or the edges. It's like natural. So give it enough time, and once it dries, it'll be there. So there you go. That's looking pretty cruddy. And in fact, I might add another product in here before we get too far. And that is, where is it here? Rainmarks is a good one. We'll be using that one later. Streaking Grime. Another Vallejo acrylic product. Of course it'll be a shelf queen. Matt doesn't drive his RC cars. What? Yes, I do. I was actually out driving my Axial Rift today. That thing is an absolute joy. I had so much fun with that. So Streaking Grime, going to be quite green and kind of mucky. And this one's flowing in really nicely. Yeah, that is a good thing about this. You can call it, you can say, it does look pretty cruddy, and that's a good thing. All right, so that's just kind of giving that panel definition a bit more effort. And it's mild, but it's there. And once we start to do the rest of the stuff on here, you'll really see how that comes to life. All right, so let's do that rear window with that same sort of Streaking Grime and rain marks technique. So you can see it's all right there, yeah? So we're going to try to create that as well. I'm going to use the Streaking Grime that I was just using, and you can sort of, you guesstimate sort of where this is going to go. Here, that's a better angle. For you, anyway. For me, it's terrible, but... And I'm just like loading a little bit into the brush and just kind of saying, okay, well, it's going to be sort of around here. And I don't want to go too heavy. And remember that it's going to, let's actually get a little bit of it out of there. And it's going to pool and go down that panel line. That's just sort of naturally where it's going to go. And you can add a little bit of some of your other washes, or you can even add paint into there if you wanted to make it really kind of stand out. give it some, where is it? There's our rain marks right there. Let me get this ready to go. Streaking grime is a fun one. Rain marks, we'll add a little bit of that in, maybe just clean that up a little bit with a little more water. See? Pretty darn close to what we just saw in the reference. Hair in that brush. There we go. Let's take a little break here for a moment. But that's basically what I wanted. I might add a little tiny bit of texture in there just to see what it does. And for that, I'll use a little bit of our rust, just a tiny touch. It's so fun to kind of like, this is the whole thing. It's always going to be sort of an experiment. You're always experimenting with stuff to see how it's going to react and how it's going to look, to kind of give you the look that you want. And I mean, this is subtle. Subtle, subtle, subtle. But when you look at the finished result, you're like, yeah, that's perfect. The thing about weathering is you've got to make sure that you know when enough is enough. Like when you say to yourself, gosh, that's starting to look like maybe that's too much. It probably is. And that's when you stop. You want these things to be really, really subtle. Because when it's not subtle, you can tell right away. Okay, so that's sort of one technique there. And we're going to apply that, the streaking grime and this rain effects or rain marks. We're going to do that in a couple more areas where that sort of stuff would gather. Like along these drip rails, there would definitely be a lot of that. So we're going to try to kind of add that in along these drip rails. And again, a little goes a long way. Because again, it's just about creating age. And it would pool, right? Like all of this grime would pool. Drip rails, not rip rails, sorry. It would all pool. So there would be pools of this sort of grimy, sort of cruddy stuff around the windshield wipers. And yeah, I'm going way above and beyond where I would normally go. But this really is a work of art to me. So I want it to sort of have that kind of feel. It doesn't need to be this intense. Your first weathering job, the best advice I can give you, look online and see where these sort of things are, you know, on a real car. Look up rusty trucks, you know, like if you're building a Hilux, look up rusty Hilux. So you know where the rust actually forms in real life. That's a really great piece of advice that I can give you, and it's, you know, it's so much more accurate when you do it that way. You know, like there would be grime at the bottom of these headlight buckets, right? Because that's where water and crud and grime is going to pool. So, you know, that's what we're doing here. We're looking at how things would work in real life. And it's so subtle. I can't stress that enough. It's not about really loading it up. Toyota, you just dip the entire truck in rust paint. Depends on the Toyota, Travis. And I mean, we can go in and we can add some grime into some of these bits here, because obviously there would be grime there too. Anywhere there's a hard top surface, I'm going to load up, right? It's just natural. And it's not something that necessarily films all that well, unfortunately. But, you know, we'll get some pictures going here at the end of this process, and you'll get a very good idea of how it's all going to look once it's complete. All right. So I think that's it for streaking grime for now. We'll put a little bit just in there. Maybe I don't love that. That's better. Acrylic is great because you do have a bit of time. Not as much time as you would with lacquers. Those you've got ages. But that's actually one technique that I could show you now if you're interested. It's called the oil dot technique, and I used it on the that guy over there. So I've got this product here called oil brushers. These are super handy. This is an oil brusher, and it's basically oil paint without any of the linseed oil that they would use to keep it fresh. You can use this straight out of the container. And the oil dot method, you basically, I know it's going to look crazy when I do this, and I should probably actually have another bigger brush handy, but I don't. Where are my other brushes? Stand by, please. See if I've got a big enough one here. Yes, I do. This, yeah, that was my goal, scaled photography, making sure I have something here that you can always kind of come back to and reference and say, oh, that's how that's done. Okay, I'm going to do that then. These are just some cheap hobby brushes that I have here. They're not really special or good. But they're useful for this purpose. With the oil brusher technique, or the oil dot method, what you're doing is you're creating a random pattern. And I think I'll just do it on the hood for now. But you take your oil brushers. It's basically like a mascara. And you take out the applicator and you get most of the paint off the applicator. Sorry. There you go. And you just lightly put dots in sort of a random pattern on the surface that you're going to be working with here. And it doesn't really need to be a lot. It can be a little, just like that. And I try to use colors that are sort of complementary to the actual vehicle. So this one's got that grimy one. I'm going to use some green. And you're just lightly putting these dots on the hood. Like I said, sort of randomly. And then I might add in a little bit of brown. Just a little bit. What this is going to do, because we're going to dry brush all of this off, basically. I'm just adding some brown in here. Okay, so now that we've done that, and I'll show you what that looks like. You're like, oh no, you've ruined it. Not so. So we're going to take a clean brush that has nothing on it, but we're going to get some, where is it? I need some of my actual thinner for... I have it standby. Thinner for washes. No. White Spirit. I think that's what I need. Wait. Yeah, I think it's White Spirit I need. I have forgotten. This stuff is all pretty aggressive, so I add a little bit of the thinner into the brush, but then I brush it all out, and then you just start streaking this across. And you're like, it doesn't look like it's doing anything. But I assure you, it is. It's adding, you can see it really well on that panel. As you wipe it off, you're streaking it around and you're blending. So then you're, you know, what was perfectly blue paint now isn't perfectly blue. It still looks quite blue here, but, and you can go over and do this a bunch of times. And in fact, we probably will. But what it's doing is it's griming up the paint a little bit so it's not perfectly blue. And it's hard to tell on the screen, but I assure you it's working quite well. In fact, I'm going to go over and do it another one here. Give it another coat. Fiberglass doesn't rust. Well, I am doing this off of a reference. I don't think there was a lot of fiberglass on these bodies, if I'm honest. Not the original 60s bugs. Okay, so we've added a little bit more of that. Let's get the green going again here. Yeah, it's looking, you know what? I can see it from here. This is going to be a pretty awesome technique for this car. I think it's really going to be the sort of cruddiness that you would expect. And you can vary this technique. Yeah, it's grime. It's not rust. That's a good point. All right, so let's just go back at it here. And the idea is to really blend it in so you don't see any of the brush strokes anymore or any of the dots. But it really, man, it just looks so great. I'm so thrilled. Just adds so much added extra grime and age to the paint. It's so subtle, but I think it adds an awful lot. Okay, so still quite shiny because, of course, this is a gloss, and we'll matte it out later. But I wish it really showed up better on camera, but it's not right now. But man, it looks so much more grimy now. With the oil-based stuff, you don't need to use anything to seal it because it's oil-based, and once it's dry forever. But yeah, man, oh man. I just wish you could see it better because it looks so awesome. There, you can sort of see it there. Dry pigments works pretty well too. You can totally use those. But this is just another different way of doing it. Maybe if we pull back from it, you can see it better. Yeah, there you go. So you can definitely see how this has sort of dulled it all out and made it not the same blue that you see up here. They are definitely different now. And it's because it's random, it really is random. And it looks awesome. I'm so thrilled with that. I mean, where we would really see it, and you know what, let's do it. We're going to see it a lot more in the actual white. I think it's probably fair to go through this process together. I can't believe it. Yeah, this is a really excellent technique. It's something that I picked up from static model guys. And of course, the panels that are above are going to be filthier than the ones on the side, and that's just natural. So, oops, we won't put a ton of dots here. And they would be grimier towards the bottom. So again, keep that in mind too when you're doing your random dot patterns. Because it's random, it really looks random. Hello, Wes. Thanks for checking in. And we'll do a little bit of green in here as well, because that worked really nicely on the top. Watch the tank, guys. This is where Night Shift, actually. If you want to see some really cool weathering techniques, check out Night Shift on YouTube. He is an absolute military modeling god. I love watching his stuff too. It's so relaxing. All right, let's give this a go now. So there you go. Now you can see how much different one panel looks to the next. And that's exactly what we're going for. It just looks awesome. Oops, there's a bit of wet rust in there, but that's okay. Ah. I'm going to fix that because that does not look appropriate. There we go. Like it never happened. Some people might be saying, I can't believe you've ruined this model. But this is exactly what I was kind of hoping to accomplish, you know? So there you go. Now it's got a really nice, varied kind of patina to the paint. And I think it looks friggin' rad. Because let's, just for the sake of comparison, get that in your head, get that side in your head, okay? Compared to that. Tell me that this doesn't look infinitely more realistic. One more time. Let's flip it around. Like, you know, if you're doing a clean, brand new build, for sure. If it's like, you know, right off the factory or you just finished building this for Shippy, great. But this is used. This has been sitting there. And I think it looks so much better. I'm pretty thrilled with that. Mom used to say it's called character. Yeah, definitely. That is 100% character. Without a doubt. I'm really pretty pleased with how that's looking so far. And that's just a couple of techniques. There's a lot more that you could do to really kind of make this come alive. One thing we should probably do is panel gaps. I can quickly show you that. That's super easy. All this stuff is available in like static model stores more than anywhere else. In Rust we trust. Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. So Nuln oil or any kind of black wash or whatever. And you can just go right into these gaps. Just go slow. Works a lot better when your oil-based paints are dry. But, you know, we're just making panel gaps. Hobby Lobby, I couldn't say for sure. I don't have those here. But all this stuff I got at a static model store that really, you know, like focuses on the static model kind of stuff. There, panel gaps, so much better. All right. Shoot, you know, I think that's maybe where we're gonna stop. How long have we been doing this? Only an hour. We got a lot more time. Let's do some, these vent gaps here. That's a good suggestion there, Rob. We'll get out the Nuln Oil again. Yeah, because one of the final steps, once you've kind of done all of these other things, then I like to seal it with a little bit of, this is going to take forever, but I like to seal it with some matte clear, if possible. You don't have to use matte, but it is nice to seal in some of these effects. This is going to be painful for you to watch, so I'm not going to do all of them. But once that dries, you can see the difference it's going to make. Just gives you a little bit more blech. Because this thing on the back is especially gross. And that's something maybe we could do a little more work on tonight too, just to show you some of the other elements that you can apply to this to make it cruddy. I've already pre-weathered the motor. You've already seen that in its state. I think, and I don't know, you guys can kind of chime in, but weathering for me is probably the most fun that I have in terms of the actual construction. Like, I love scratch building, and I love, you know, really spending a lot of time noodling on a model and getting it all working and stuff. But weathering is just so much fun. It really just adds so much to the overall build too. And you know, for like 20 bucks, 25 bucks for these products specifically total, you're doing some pretty crazy stuff. People will go, "Wow, you ruined it." And you'll say, "Yes, I ruined it on purpose." Hey, Sean Burrell, thanks for the $4.99. Looking good, sir. Thanks for the tips. Hey, my pleasure. I hope that in some small way these things help. The best thing I can tell you, find a good reference. References are so important to this because, you know, you want it to... Let's widen this frame out a little bit. You want it to look the same as this. You want these to be the same thing. We're going to need to do a lot of work around here. There's a lot of crud going on there. What else can we use? We've got some engine soot. Brown engine soot's probably not dark enough. Oh, burning oil out that tractor stack. Yep. Definitely is. I used a lot of the same techniques. I should show you this. I used a lot of the same techniques on the actual motor itself. Again, to make it look as realistic as possible. There's some shininess in there from the wet effects, which obviously makes it dry kind of wet. That's another good shirt. This will help it dry wet. Rust, soot. The soot I kind of added with an airbrush. That's the only really kind of good way to do that. But we'll maybe, you know what, we'll show you a little bit of that because the back end of this car is obviously going to get a big group or a big kind of dusting of crud. Actually, that's a really good thing. We'll do that now. So for that, I don't like to use straight black. I actually use dark gray blue, believe it or not. Yeah, a lot of Noah, a lot of the things I picked up from static model builders. A lot of these techniques, thankfully, will apply. And I'm going to add, this is where, you know, it's kind of nuts, but I'm going to add a little bit of the dark gray wash as well, or light gray wash to that. It will help as a flow kind of accelerator as well. Give it a second. Cleaning off my needle. Just joined. How's the build going? Build's going great. Going so good. All right, so I've got a gigantic needle on here, which is probably way too big. But we'll do what we can with it. It's a mess, Aiden. It's an absolute mess. Just to recap, there's been some crud applied already. We've rusted out the rocker panels. We've applied a kind of an oil dot effect to get this paint to look really crappy. There's the crappy side. There's the good side as a comparison. You can see that a lot of things have already happened, and it's looking particularly crap. So now we're going to kind of get this whole back end a bit sooty, because there would be a lot of soot. So I'm just using really low PSI. I'm at like 10 PSI, I think. And just going to lightly dust this up. You may not even see anything at first, but you can see as you keep going here, things are getting a bit crappier. And I'm just going along the edges to start. And you'll see it starts to build up. And the whole back of this car would just be absolutely gross. Can you imagine having to work on it? No, thank you. All right, so there you go. That's just the first step. This is a Pache Talon top feed. Flatlander 72, gigantic needle. And that's what she said. Oh boy. All right, I've got another one here called Engine Gray, which I'm going to use. And that's going to be basically the same color, just slightly less blue. And then I'm going to add a tiny touch of black into that. Like these little, you're like, this tiny bottle, that'll never last long. But yes, it will. Because with an airbrush, you're basically using a drop at a time. If that. And then this is Airbrush Flow Improver. These are meant for airbrushing, but I find that they just need a tiny little bit of help. And then they flow really nicely. I'm going to need to stir that up in there a little bit. And this is just adding another layer of kind of like a soot in the background. I'm pretty happy with that color. That's going to be good. All right. Just get all the gray out. All right. And here we go for round 2. This is going to be all along the lower edge again, but it's not going to go up as high as the other stuff. And again, when you go like, I don't know, is that too much? Stop. Don't use any more. Old Son, yeah, you've missed quite a bit, sir. You're definitely going to want to go back and watch this one again, because there's been a lot of cool stuff, in my opinion. A lot of cool stuff has happened so far. We're really kind of making this old Beetle come to life and really make it feel as if it is very old. I 3D printed this just to hold these. Maths were required. All right, I'm gonna actually get all this out, get it even darker. And now we're just gonna do some far away. Just to kind of add to the overall look, but not add a ton of layers. You're like, he's not doing anything. I promise I am. All right. That's going to do it for that. And because it's all acrylic paint, you can wash your airbrush with just regular everyday water. That's what I do. Kind of rub a paintbrush in there just to loosen up all the paint. Make sure nothing's sticking to the inside of the cup. And then I've got this really handy tool here. Mr. Airbrush Cleaning Bottle. It actually is called that. Mr. Airbrush Cleaning Bottle. It's got a hole in it. And you quite literally just put your airbrush in the hole and just run the paint through. It's already been diluted with water. And kind of let it go till all your water is out. Almost done. There you go, you can hear it. Clean as a whistle. Yeah, definitely, Wes. I will have to do a before and after, mostly because I want to show off what you can do. Let me clean up a little bit. Cleaning up is always a good idea. I'm not sponsored by Vallejo, but man, I'd like to be. All right, so now that that's done in that area, let's put the body back on the chassis so you can sort of see how that'll all look together. Because I think you're going to like it. Why aren't you going? Get in your hole. Oh, right, I put the pin in. Good morning from Switzerland. Hope you're doing well. So, there you... yes! Yes! That's what you wanted! I'm going to have to do it all over again when the license plates arrive. But doesn't that look awesome now? It's like it was supposed to be like that, all cruddy. I'm so chuffed with that. That looks really, really great. It's all coming along really nicely. These wheels and tires, obviously, are too clean. So, we could actually give those a hit with the airbrush too. But I'm probably going to save that for another time. Monster parts, that looks so awesome so far. Yes, thank you very much. I'm also pretty chuffed. There are a few things I still need to do, obviously. The other side and the oil dot method on the tops of these fenders and most of the front. But you can see, here's the clean side. And you're like, that's a nice looking model. I agree, it is nice. But it just looks so much better from the other side now. It's all just kind of coming together, isn't it? Man, oh man. So cruddy. I'm also noticing that I missed a little hint of rust right here. There we go. And there's the chuff. Exactly. Yeah, so far so good. The wheels are definitely dusty and pretty flat in their finish. So what I'll probably end up doing is just creating a quick mask. You know what really is helpful? Where to go? Where to go? Where is it? Here it is. Get yourself one of these. It's just a circle tracer, so you can make circles. But you know what? If you're lucky, you can find the right size circle so you don't have to mask the tires. Right? Huzzah! So that way you can hit your tires with whatever, or your wheels with whatever clear coat you want. And yeah, you don't need anything other than one of these. They're very handy. This one's painted with primer red. From what vehicle? I'll let you guess. It's in this room. Any tips for using liquid mask? Multiple coats is really important with liquid mask, and in alternating directions. So if you're using liquid mask, brush it in vertically, let that dry, brush the next one in horizontally, then vertically. You can take them apart to paint them. Well, yeah, obviously you can do that, but I don't want to take them apart now. If you're lazy, the circle technique. Steam truck, no. RC Dreaming, at first I was like, don't mess up that body. But now I see that the end effect, I'm really impressed. Great job. Thank you. And I hope that I've given you guys some kind of good tips to work with so you can try some of these things on your own models. The biggest thing I can tell you, find a good reference online, print out all the photos, look at it. Think about where dust is going to go. Think about where rust is going to go. Think about all of the things that make an old truck look old, or car in this case. Don't just put rust everywhere. Like, that's something I see a lot of, is like, you know, rust right here or a big dent right there. If you can explain it, makes a lot more sense. Half trek, correct. Who said the half trek first? Ian Turbot, congratulations. The giveaway truck, no. Drink more. Matt, do you ever use pigments with binder for weathering? Yes, I do. I've got a whole selection of them. Hello, Ben. How are you? So, what pigments do I have here? These are from MIG, And I used to use these a lot. They're pretty cool. They come in these little things here. It's basically like a ground up dust. And how you use these, this is pretty great stuff. Again, load up with a little bit of water. I don't know that I'm going to use these anywhere here. Maybe I will at the back here, actually. I won't use that one, though. Let me find one that's more appropriate. Actually, this one will be fine. This is, which one is this? Europe Dust. All right, so a little bit of water in my palette. And load up a brush. This one's already got paint on it. Ding dong. And just kind of dip it in. So you've loaded up your brush with a little bit of pigment. And I'm just going to do it as sort of like a rusting sort of thing here. And it looks really gross, and you're like, ugh, that's not good. But that's going to dry, and it's going to have a really cool kind of texture to it. And then once that dries, you can use an enamel fixer that will fix those pigments into place. Europe dust as opposed to Canada dust, yes. Paul, I'm probably not going to do much weathering on the chassis because you don't really see the underside of it, so there isn't much point in doing that, in my opinion. Yeah. So once that pigment dries, you can fix it in place with this pigment fixer, and yeah. That's all there is to it. It's actually pretty interesting stuff as well, and it can really make things look really interesting, with the right kind of technique. It does require a few more steps, but it can be worth it. Definitely. It's pretty cool stuff. And there's a lot of different ways to use it, but that's one way that I'm using it right there. Okay, what time is it? My wife's makeup works just like that. What about real rust as pigment? You could use that. That's what Sophisticated Finishes is. Sophisticated Finishes is just a iron filing based paint that has an activator, and that activator can be vinegar. What you do is you apply all that paint. You can let it dry. I think there's sort of like a limit. There is a time limit on how long you should let it dry for. But once it's dry, you apply the vinegar or the activator, whatever you've still got, and it creates beautiful, real rust. I used a lot of it. This is going to be difficult to get up here, but I'm going to do my best. Let me get this out of the way for 1 second. Without this chair squeaking, because I oiled it on the half track here. This whole back end, all of this is Sophisticated Finishes. So you just apply the iron filing paint, and then you apply the activator, and it becomes rusty. I also did it actually all over the body too. In a few different ways. God, this thing is so heavy. Okay, so the whole body was painted with primer, and then underneath the primer, now it's become a weathering show-off, if you will. So I painted the body with regular primer. Then over the primer, I painted the whole thing with Sophisticated Finishes rust paint. Hey, Quack RC, thanks for the $2. Hey man, sorry I'm late. This is really cool. I'm glad that you think so. I'm really kind of thrilled to be showing off some of these techniques. So then I painted the whole body with Sophisticated Finishes. Then I did a light coat of white, and then I did a light coat of red to kind of seal everything in. And then I went back and I sanded back some of the areas, or scratched some of the areas, and it's sort of hard to see, so let me see if I zoom in a little bit. Yeah, there you go. So like that whole area was a scratch. And then I just kind of let the truck sit and added a whole bunch of vinegar and activator, and the rust just kind of came through the primer, or came through the white paint. Josh, I like the idea of this. Talk dirty to me Tuesday. Oh, man. What else did Josh say? Make it dirtier. Yeah, so there you go. That's another way that you can use rust. It actually, really works best on actual metal bits. Like the front of this truck is just foul, as you can see. But it's just so perfect. That's exactly what you want from weathering. It looks incredible because it looks so gross. But it's accurate, right? That's how it would look. All right. Enough of the half track. Oh. Yeah, it was weird not having any news today. Josh, I guess, was busy. He barely responded to me, so can't fault him. He's a busy guy. There's lots going on there. All right. So, I think that's where it's at. I feel like we got a pretty good demo done today. If you have any further questions, by all means, post them in the comments after the video is done rendering, and I will respond in kind, as I usually do. If you liked this video and you want to see more like it, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell. There's no such thing as too much half track. Yes, you can also use steel wool to make rust. That's basically what Sophisticated Finishes is. But again, make sure you're applying it in the right places. Go get some references online. Let's turn that off. Go get some references online. See what the actual truck looks like. Build your idea of how you're going to rust or how you're going to weather around a real vehicle. It will make it look so much better in the end. So, yeah. I think that's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Live stream takeover tomorrow night. And I might have another video or two coming out very shortly. Definitely a Rift running video. Well, hopefully, assuming the footage came out good. And a couple other things as well. All right. Thank you to Quack RC and Sean Burrell. Much appreciated. Yeah, you know what? Another great place to see good examples of weathering. Head over to the Scale Builders Guild forum. There are a lot of really talented folks there doing some pretty awesome stuff. And if you liked this kind of stuff and this technique, there is a lot more to be seen on the forum. And we have just upgraded the forum software. So it works so much better on mobile. You don't need Tap and Talk. You don't need any of that nonsense. No plugins, nothing. It all just runs great. So if you are stuck on a mobile phone or a tablet or whatever, that's a great new way to check out the forum. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, see, Harley Designs. The new forum looks great. Thank you very much, guys. Yeah. See you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Bye, everyone. Love you.